Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to completely dismantle the illusion that the future can be perfectly predicted. Think about it. We spend so much of our time obsessing over what's going to happen next, right? Whether it's the stock market, the latest tech trends, or just our own personal lives. But today, we're diving into the hard evidence to discover why our deep-seated uncertainty about tomorrow is actually, believe it or not, our absolute greatest strength.
To kick things off, let's look at a quote from the economist John Kenneth Galbraith. He totally nailed this cultural obsession when he said, "The only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology look respectable." It's funny because, well, it hits a little too close to home. We trust forecasters with our money, our public policies, our major life choices. But if you actually look at their track records, they usually leave a lot to be desired.
So, to map out our journey today, we're going to be pulling some incredible insights from Margaret Heffernan's brilliant book, Uncharted: How to Navigate the Future. Her research argues powerfully that we really have to embrace the unknown rather than run away from it. And over the next few minutes, we're going to break down exactly how to do just that. Section 1. The Prediction Addiction.
As humans, we naturally crave certainty. We want to know what's coming, which makes our modern world incredibly uncomfortable. See, historically, we lived in a complicated world. Think of a complicated system like a factory assembly line. It follows strict rules, it's linear, and if you manage it right, it's pretty predictable. But today, we live in a complex world. It's entirely nonlinear and fluid. Take Apple's global supply chain for the iPhone, for example. It draws materials from dozens of countries. A tiny labor dispute in one of those countries or sudden, unexpected tariff can cause a disproportionate, massive disruption across the globe. In a complex world like the one we wake up to every single day, making pinpoint predictions is practically impossible.
Section 2. Prophets and False Prophets.
So what happens when our linear thinking brains slam into all this dizzying complexity? Well, we turn to forecasters. But the crazy thing is, the origins of modern forecasting are actually rooted in sheer panic. Back in the late 1980s, pioneers like the famous economist Irving Fisher and entrepreneur Roger Babson were driven by profound personal uncertainties. Both of these men contracted tuberculosis, which at the time was a virtual death sentence with a totally unknown outcome. To combat that terrifying lack of control, they turned to the financial markets, building these massive databases to try and predict economic patterns. And it worked. At first, they built huge followings, but then they were completely blindsided by the 1929 stock market crash. Actually, Fisher famously predicted the market had reached a permanently high plateau literally days before the entire thing collapsed, losing his fortune and his reputation overnight.
The catastrophic failure of those early pioneers uncovered 3 fatal flaws that, guess what, still plague modern forecasters today. First up, their models were just incomplete. You simply cannot capture every single variable of a complex reality in a spreadsheet. Second, they had ideological agendas. They basically saw what they wanted to see based on their own personal worldviews. And third is self-interest. Think about it. A forecaster gets famous and gets paid by predicting massive dramatic booms and busts. There is a deeply vested interest in hyping up drama just to capture our attention.
Section 3. The Propaganda of Inevitability.
Now fast forward to the day, and our addiction to prediction has essentially been weaponized. Take this super specific number, 47%. In 2013, a wildly popular Oxford Martin report claimed that exactly 47% of U.S. jobs would vanish due to automation by 2035. This number was everywhere. It sounded so hyper-specific, so scientific, that the media, politicians, and the general public instantly swallowed it as an absolute, terrifying fact.
But the second you compare that to what other leading organizations were saying, the whole illusion shatters. Look at this. The OECD estimated just 9% of jobs were at risk. PwC said somewhere between 21 and 38%. McKinsey shot all the way up to 60%. What this proves is that the highly specific 47% was just a dramatic, attention-grabbing guess, yet it completely hijacked public anxiety for years.
Tech companies absolutely love to market things like driverless cars and AI as inevitable. But as Daryl Plummer from Gartner brilliantly puts it, inevitability is just a statement seeking a reaction. By calling a specific technological future inevitable, these companies are actively disarming our critical thinking. They want to stop us from asking crucial questions about safety, infrastructure, and ethics, effectively forcing a predetermined and usually highly profitable model right onto human life.
Section 4. Does history repeat itself?
So if data and shiny tech can't perfectly predict the future, surely we can just look backwards to see forwards, right? History repeats itself. Well, let's consider the massive danger of relying on historical analogy. Before World War II, the French built the incredibly massive, supposedly impregnable Maginot Line of fortresses. Why? Because they assumed the future would look exactly like the past, that Germany would repeat their World War I trench warfare strategy. That historical analogy left them entirely blind to reality. The Germans simply changed their strategy, bypassed the forts entirely, attacked through Belgium, and invaded France in 5 days.
Relying blindly on history causes absolute disaster. Here's another tragic example. In 1976, a minor flu outbreak at a military base led officials to utterly panic. They were terrified of a repeat of the devastating 1918 flu pandemic. Driven entirely by this historical analogy, the government rushed a mass vaccination campaign, and 40 million Americans were vaccinated. But here's the tragedy. The predicted 1918-style pandemic never arrived. Instead, the rushed vaccine itself caused life-threatening Guillain-Barré syndrome, paralyzing and killing dozens of people. Talk about a cure worse than a disease that literally didn't even exist. That false historical parallel cost lives.
Section 5. Charting the unknown.
Okay, so if history misleads us and data fails us, how in the world do we actually navigate a complex world? Well, the answer starts right inside our own minds, with something called neuroplasticity. There's this famous study of London taxi drivers who have to memorize a mind-boggling 25,000 streets, and it showed that the navigation center of their brains, the hippocampus, actually grew physically larger. This shows us that human beings are deeply physically adaptable. It means that no matter how chaotic your daily life feels right now, you are biologically wired to learn and navigate vast, incredibly complex, unpredictable environments.
And that exact same neuroscience reveals something truly fascinating about how our memory works. Our memory isn't a fixed video player on your phone that just records and plays back the past. When we remember something, our brain is dynamically pulling different, scattered pieces together. Why? Because memory is actually a creative tool. We use the building blocks of our past to actively imagine, simulate, and construct completely new scenarios for our future.
And this is exactly how the real pros operate. Researcher Philip Tetlock studied what he calls super forecasters. These are ordinary people who routinely beat professional intelligence analysts at predicting global events. How do they do it? They never deal in absolute certainties. They deal in fluid probabilities. They are constantly updating their expectations the second new information arrives. They embrace doubt, they reject dogmatic ideas, and importantly, they keep their forecast horizons very short, usually under 400 days. They know the distant future is just a blank slate.
Because the reality is that flukes, totally unexpected mutations, and individual human choices are what actually build tomorrow. In the source material, there's this really powerful story of a young man named Jacob Dunn, who managed to turn his life around completely after committing a tragic crime. His path to university wasn't something you could predict. It was sparked by a totally unexpected offer of restorative justice. Or consider Johanna, who found a high-level career in digital media after an undiagnosed illness derailed her schooling. There was no grand algorithm or master plan for either of them. The future is shaped by our messy, human, real-time choices.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from all of this. Once we reject the false prophets, tune out the panic-inducing clickbait, and ignore the tech giants' propaganda of inevitability, this beautiful shift happens. We realize that uncertainty is not some dark, scary void that we should be terrified of. Uncertainty is actually a blank canvas. It is quite literally the ultimate source of human freedom. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We are not trapped by the past, and our future is absolutely not pre-written by some algorithm. The unknown is entirely yours to navigate. So as you step out into the world today, if the future isn't predictable, what will you choose to make it? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.